Has your marriage ever turned into a damn joke? On speakerphone? I was in my shop, steel cracking under heat, when my phone lit up with her name, Sienna. I answered, and before I could take a breath, she spit out, "You're on speaker. The girls want to hear your reaction." Their laughter rolled through the line like cheap applause. Then she said it. "I'm at a lawyer's office. We're finalizing the divorce." My wife, announcing the end of our marriage to an audience, like it was entertainment, like I was the punchline. I let them laugh. Then I asked one question, and every single laugh died on the spot. Stay with me. Hit subscribe and follow this story, because you're about to hear the exact question that shut the whole room up. Before that speakerphone circus, it was smaller things, quieter cuts. I remember standing in our kitchen in Reynoldsburg, looking at the old white fridge. The door was covered in our life. Bills, takeout menus, a photo from a trip that already felt like it belonged to strangers. Sienna walked in, cap off a black marker, and without even looking at me, drew a hard line straight through Friday. "Don't plan anything cute, I'm busy," she said. No smile, no pause, just ink. I had an envelope in my hand. Reservation at a steakhouse by the river, the kind of place you book when you're still betting on us. "Busy with what?" I asked. She shrugged, already halfway to the hallway. Stuff. I stood there a second longer than I should have, then slid the envelope into the junk drawer. It landed on top of rubber bands and old batteries like it belonged there. That sound, that soft little thud, felt like someone closing a door I didn't know we'd left open. I didn't beg. I didn't follow her down the hall. That was the night I stopped making plans around her and started noticing how easily she erased me. I still kept the reservation. Stubborn, I guess, or hopeful. Men my age confuse the two a lot. Friday rolled around and I tried one more time. "Hey," I said in the kitchen, keeping my voice steady. "I booked that table by the river. 8 o'clock. No big show, just dinner." Sienna looked up from her phone, eyebrows already annoyed. "I told you," she said. "I don't want some performance." I frowned. "It's just dinner, Sienna, not a proposal. We used to like that place." She laughed once, that sharp little laugh she saves for when she thinks I'm being pathetic. "Hard pass," she said. "You should have asked me before deciding for both of us." That one landed, because I had asked. I'd asked when I said busy with what, and she tossed out stuff like I was a telemarketer, not her husband. In that moment, I realized something ugly. The same effort that used to make me thoughtful now made me controlling in her head. So I didn't argue. I didn't push. I let the reservation stand, and quietly marked down the first night I felt like a stranger in my own marriage. Monday morning, I went in early. Ward Metalworks is quiet at dawn. Just the buzz of the lights warming up and that cold, honest smell of metal and oil. Out there, things make sense. Steel either fits or it doesn't. No mixed signals. No stuff. I was leaning over a parts list when Rick walked in, welding helmet under his arm, coffee in his hand. "Man," he said, eyeing me, "you look like somebody canceled your weekend." I smirked. The calendar at home got edited by a pen with opinions. Rick barked a laugh. "That pen got legs and an Instagram?" I shrugged, staring at the order sheet. "I'm just done pretending it's all fine," I said. "Separate lanes. I'm done planning around question marks." He went quiet for a second. "That's how you know a man heard you. The thing about a shop like mine is this. If a beam's off by even half an inch, the whole frame feels it." I was starting to admit the same about my marriage. Something was off, and no amount of "we're just busy" was going to make it line up again. That night, I tried simple. No river, no reservation, no performance, just roasted chicken, vegetables, 2 plates on the table. I lit one quiet candle. Habit, I guess. Old version of us. Sienna came in late, keys dropping on the counter, heels in her hand. Hair perfect, makeup fresh, perfume loud enough to say she hadn't just been stuck in traffic. "You eat?" I asked. "I'm not hungry," she said, kicking her heels aside. "Meeting ran long." I nodded. "I made enough for 2. She stared at the plate, then pushed it away with one finger like it was a bill she didn't remember running up. "This is pressure, Caleb," she said. "You think you can cook your way back to something. I let that sink in. Dinner, as pressure. I think we've stopped acting like teammates, I answered. Calm, too calm. She rolled her eyes and walked down the hall. I picked up her plate, wrapped it in foil, slid it into the fridge. And I knew, with that small, stupid motion, that was the last time I'd set a plate down for both of us without checking if the other seat was actually taken. After that dinner, I stopped pretending this was just a rough patch. You can argue about feelings all day, but money is where the truth shows up. Next morning, before the shop opened, I sat in my truck with my banking app open and a knot in my stomach. Then I did what needed doing. I opened a separate account for the shop profits, my work, my hours, my risk. The joint account? That became utilities, mortgage, groceries, survival. No more mystery charges, no more "I'll explain later." I texted her. Shared expenses are covered up to a cap. Extras are separate. She replied almost instantly. Did you type that with your jaw clenched? I stared at the screen, then answered. Typed it with a calculator. That was it. No essay, no apology. I wasn't trying to punish her. I was making sure I didn't go broke financing my own disrespect. Men like me don't always say much. But the moment we start separating money, we've already started separating our hearts. A couple days later, life tossed me a little test. Our neighbor Tommy texted me about a backyard BBQ at the Cullens place. Cornhole, cheap beer, kids running through sprinklers. Normal suburban Saturday. The kind of thing married couples show up to as a unit. Next morning, over coffee, I mentioned it. Saturday at 6, the Cullens, I said. They put us on the group text. Sienna didn't look up from her phone. I'm not going. I nodded. All right. I'll stop by for an hour, then head to the shop. That got her attention. She finally looked at me. So you'll go without me? She asked. I'll live, I said. Her face twisted. You're making me look like the bad guy. I set my mug down, met her eyes. You're doing that fine on your own, I said. This is me not covering for it. Silence. Heavy, messy, honest. In marriages like ours, there's always a moment you stop protecting someone's image and start protecting your own reality. That was mine. Saturday came anyway. I drove over to the Cullens alone. Kids were screaming in the yard, country music leaking out of a Bluetooth speaker, smoke from the grill hanging in the air. Regular, decent chaos. Tommy spotted me first. Beer in hand, big grin. Caleb, where's the boss? He joked, meaning Sienna. I lifted a shoulder. Busy, full dance card. He laughed, then squinted at me. You two always seem solid, man. For a second, I almost gave the usual line. Yeah, we're good, just busy. The PR version of marriage. Instead, I heard myself say, we are. We just stopped performing for the bleachers. Tommy blinked, then nodded slowly. Huh. Respect. We tossed beanbags, talked about work, kids, nothing. But in the back of my head, something had shifted. I realized how much of our marriage had turned into a show for other people. Instagram shots, group dinners, smiles for the neighborhood. Meanwhile, the real stuff, the lonely plates, the crossed-off Fridays, the stuff explanations, stayed behind closed doors. That night, standing in somebody else's backyard, I quietly fired myself from being part of the act. When I got home, her car was in the driveway, lights on in the living room. I walked in and found Sienna on the couch with her best friend, Brianna Cole. Wine glasses on the table, legs crossed, that tight air women get when they've been talking about you. Brianna gave me a polite smile. Hey, Caleb, we were just talking about boundaries. I nodded, hung my keys. Yeah? Boundaries are popular this year. She tried a gentle tone. Everybody needs a little space. Space is cheap, I said. Respect is the currency. Sienna rolled her eyes. You act like I owe you a schedule. I sat down in the chair across from them, not too close. You don't owe me a schedule, I said. You owe this house honesty. 2 adults, same roof. The room went quiet. The room went. Brianna's eyes bounced between us, like she'd walked into the middle of a game she didn't understand yet. It hit me in that moment. I wasn't crazy. I wasn't demanding too much. I was just the only one in the room still treating marriage like a team sport instead of a solo performance with a cheering section. The silence after I said, "two adults, same roof," sat there like a third person in the room. Brianna shifted in her seat, tucking hair behind her ear. "Maybe don't corner her, Caleb," she said softly. "She's just overwhelmed." I looked at her, then at Sienna. "I'm not cornering anyone," I said. "I'm drawing the floor plan." Sienna snorted. "You love control. You always have." I shook my head. "No, I love clarity." 3 words, but they hit harder than any shouting match we'd ever had. Control is what people accuse you of when they don't want to be clear, when they like the fog because it lets them move how they want without anybody calling it what it is. The air turned sour. Brianna grabbed her bag and stood up. "I'll text you," she told Sienna, eyes avoiding mine. When the door closed behind her, the house felt bigger and emptier at the same time. For years I'd played the easygoing husband, the guy who shrugged things off, called it no big deal. That night I retired that version of me. I wasn't asking for control. I was finally admitting I deserved straight answers. 2 days later she tried something new, softer, sweeter. I was at the kitchen table going through orders when a mug slid into my line of sight. My mug. Black coffee, splash of vanilla, exactly how I take it. "I know you've been trying," Sienna said, leaning on the counter. "Work's been a lot. Maybe we can do something low-key Friday. No reservations, no pressure." Old me would have jumped at it, grabbed onto that little scrap of hope like a life raft. This version of me checked the calendar in my head. "Friday I'm at the shop late," I said. "Saturday, diner at 10. She frowned, like I'd given the wrong answer to a test I didn't know I was taking. "Saturdays. Complicated," she muttered, backing off. "I'll text you." She never did. Saturday came and went. No message. "No, sorry, can we reschedule?" So I took my truck out of town, drove until the talk radio got fuzzy, and the thoughts in my head finally quieted. Ate a greasy burger at some roadside shack that reminded me of being 20 and stupid and free. Somewhere between the fries and the drive back, it clicked. That coffee wasn't an apology. It was marketing. She wanted the option of closeness without the cost of commitment. After that "I'll text you" weekend that never came, something in me shifted gears. I stopped arguing with her words and started listening to her routine. It was little things at first. Tuesdays, Thursdays, and every now and then on Sundays, she'd come home late. Same excuse. Meeting ran long, traffic was a mess, lost track of time. But the perfume was always the same. Not the everyday stuff. The one she wore when she wanted strangers to notice. So I quit asking. Quit playing hall monitor. Instead, I pulled out an old notebook from the shop and started writing. Date, day, time she left, time she came back, mood, that damn perfume. On one page, I wrote a line across the top. "When you're done pretending, patterns jump out like road signs." And they did. Same nights, same windows, same lies with new wrapping paper. I wasn't snooping through her phone. I wasn't stalking her car. I was doing what men like me do best, tracking the job, reading the pattern, staying quiet, until it was time to act. That's the night I stopped being the jealous husband in her story and became the investigator in my own. Once the pattern was loud enough, I knew I needed someone who lived in the gray areas I'd been avoiding. I called a number I got from a guy who knew a guy. That's how I ended up at Maple Junction Diner on a cold morning, waiting for Grant Harlow. He walked in like any other man, worn jacket, steady eyes, nothing flashy. The kind of face that could blend in anywhere. Former military, I'd been told. We shook hands, ordered bad coffee, and I slid the notebook across the table. He flipped through it slowly. Dates, times, notes, the line about patterns and road signs. "You sure you want a file?" he asked finally. "Files write themselves into your head. Hard to unsee what you see." I held his gaze. "I'm a grown man, Grant. I don't need drama. I need clarity." He nodded once. "That's all." "All right," he said. "Give me routines, usual spots, anything you already clocked. I'll handle the rest." When I signed his retainer, it felt like signing a different kind of contract. I wasn't just suspecting anymore. I was committing to the truth, wherever it landed. The next 2 weeks felt like a test no one admitted we were taking. Cold mornings, colder nights. If I cooked, she'd already eaten with coworkers. If I stayed quiet, she'd ask, "Why are you sulking?" If I spoke up, I was starting a fight. So I stopped reacting. I shifted my hours at the shop earlier, stopped waiting around at home for maybe plans. I canceled the old gym I barely used and signed up at a place across town where an old buddy, Ray, ran the floor. I'd lift, shower, drive home, and find the same scene. Her on the couch or coming through the door late, phone glued to her hand, excuses ready like preset buttons. The marriage started to feel like a job I already knew was going to fail inspection, but I still had to finish the paperwork clean. So I did what I do with any messy project. I got organized. I cut out chasing. I cut out guessing. I kept my side of the street clean, not because I thought it would save us, but because I refused to let her chaos rewrite who I was. Ray noticed before I said a word. One afternoon, I was racking weights at his gym when he grabbed the remote and turned up the TV. Local news. They were doing a segment on small businesses, and there I was on the screen, standing in my shop, talking about metal and deadlines. "Look at you, Mr. Celebrity," he joked. Then his eyes narrowed. "You look checked out, man. Everything good at home?" I took a breath. The old answer sat on my tongue. "Yeah, we're fine, just busy." Instead, I said, "Everything is organized." He stared at me. "That's not what I asked." I shrugged. "I'm done with improvisation. People who talk get filtered." Ray tossed a towel at me. "You don't filter people you want to keep." I didn't answer because he was right and we both knew it. Somewhere between the spreadsheets, the separate bank account, the notebook full of her late nights, I'd quietly moved Sienna into a new category in my head. Not partner, not teammate, just another variable I had to manage so my whole life didn't go off the rails with her. A few days after that talk with Ray, she switched tactics again. I was at the shop, going over inventory, when the front door swung open and in walked Sienna carrying a takeout bag from my favorite spot by the river, the one I'd stopped going to in my head. "Surprise," she smiled, loud enough for Rick to hear over the grinder. "I brought you lunch." She set everything out on the workbench like a commercial, containers, napkins, even my favorite sauce. Then she leaned in and kissed my cheek, eyes flicking to Rick like she needed an audience. "We could take a weekend," she said. "Change of scene, just us." I wiped my hands, looked at the food, then at her. "I say yes to anything real," I told her. "I don't do vacation from problems." Her face tightened for half a second, then she did that wounded sigh. "You're impossible, Caleb," she said, grabbing her bag and walking out. When the door shut, Rick walked over, helmet under his arm. "That lunch came with strings," he muttered. "All I heard was a violin," I said. And for the first time, I saw it clearly. She didn't want us fixed. She just didn't want to feel like the villain. Not long after the lunch show, the phone call I'd been waiting for finally came. It was a slow morning at the shop. Fans humming, coffee already gone lukewarm on the desk. I was halfway through an invoice when my phone buzzed with a number I'd saved but hoped I'd never need often. "Grant Harlow." I answered. "Caleb." His voice was steady, businesslike. "Got your report," he said. "You want it emailed or in person?" I looked at the empty folder sitting on the corner of my desk. I'd put it there the day I hired him, like a reserved seat for the truth. "In person," I said. "Less noise." "Maple Junction?" he asked. "Yeah," I replied. "Same booth." When I hung up, I just sat there for a minute staring at that folder. Up until that moment, there was still a tiny part of me that could pretend I was overreacting, that this was just midlife static, not full-blown betrayal. But once I let that report touch my hands, there'd be no more pretending. Steel doesn't lie. Paper usually doesn't either. So I picked up the empty folder, slipped it under my arm, and drove out to meet whatever my life was about to become. Maple Junction Diner looked exactly the same. Same cracked vinyl booth, same waitress topping off coffee like nothing in the world ever really changed. But everything in me had. Grant slid into the booth across from me and set a thin folder on the table like it was nothing more than a menu. "Patterns are consistent," he said. "Same car, same locations, twice a week minimum." I opened it. There she was, Sienna, laughing at a cafe by the lake, walking into a hotel off the interstate, stepping into a downtown condo building, and next to her in every shot, Evan Cole, Brianna's husband. Not a stranger, not some random. The man who shook my hand at barbecues. The guy who stood in my living room and drank my beer. My chest didn't explode. It went very, very still. Home is supposed to be a safe place, I said quietly. You don't blow up a family for fun. Grant watched me like he was waiting for a reaction, but I wasn't there to fall apart. I was there to decide what came next. The next call I made wasn't to Sienna. It was to a lawyer. Attorney Paul Whitaker had a small office downtown. No artwork, no fake plants, just files, shelves, and a desk that looked like it had seen a lot of endings. He read Grant's report without a single interruption, turned a few pages back and forth, asked 3 questions about the house, the shop, and the separate account I'd already set up. Then he looked up. Here's what we do, he said. We file. We keep you calm. No hero speeches. He tapped the folder with one finger. Let her think she's ahead, he added. People like that overplay their hand when they think they're winning. I nodded. I can do calm, I told him. I won't do blind. A corner of his mouth lifted. Good. Blind clients are expensive. We went over assets, timelines, what I was willing to walk away from, and what I wasn't. No fireworks, no revenge fantasy, just structure. Steel, not fire. When I walked out of that office, nothing on paper had changed yet. But in my head, the marriage was no longer a question. It was a case already filed. Paul filed the paperwork on a Tuesday. From here on, he said, you stay calm, no speeches, let the process work, let her talk. So I did. That night, the garage clock hit 10:15 before I heard her car. Same routine. Door, keys, the soft slam of a woman who thinks she's untouchable. She walked into the kitchen, saw the pan on the stove. You made something? She asked. For me, I said. She gave that little smirk. You're prickly lately. I'm precise, I answered. There's a difference. She rolled her eyes. You're boring. I met her gaze, steady. Then you're free to find excitement somewhere else. We both knew she already had. The words just pulled the mask off. She scoffed, brushed past me, and disappeared down the hallway, phone lighting up her hand like a flashlight. I didn't follow, didn't apologize. You hit a point as a man where you stop trying to be interesting for someone who treats your whole life like background noise. I wasn't raising my voice anymore. I was raising my standards. The court had my paperwork. The rest was just timing. Not long after, that speakerphone call happened. The one I opened this story with. I was at the shop going through invoices when my phone lit up with her name. I answered. Her voice came through bright, almost giddy. You're on speaker. The girls want to hear your reaction. I could hear them in the background. Whine, laughter, that fake shock women do for each other. I'm at a lawyer's office, she said. We're finalizing the divorce. They laughed like it was some kind of reality show finale, like my life was content. I didn't say a word, just let the noise roll. Then I heard it, one laugh louder than the rest. Sharp, familiar. Brianna. I smiled to myself, just a little. Oh, I said into the phone, calm as a weather report. That's Brianna. I recognized the laugh. The room on their end quieted just a fraction. Then I asked my one question. Does she know you've been meeting her husband twice a week? Silence. No giggles. No sighs. Just air. Somebody whispered, What? Another voice, Brianna's, went hard and scared. Sienna, what is he talking about? I didn't wait for an answer. That was the moment the joke stopped being me. After I dropped that question on speaker and heard the silence hit, I let myself laugh once. Short, no joy in it, just release. Then I hung up. I didn't call her back. I called Paul. He picked up on the second ring. Whitaker. It's Caleb, I said. I need you to hear exactly what I just said to my wife and her little audience. I repeated it word for word. The speakerphone, the girls, the divorce announcement, the question about Brianna's husband. He listened without interrupting, then exhaled through his nose. Not ideal, he said, but not fatal. The paperwork's already out. Certified mail. I waited. Actually, he added, this might help. You're not ambushing her. She's already in the headspace. Perfect timing. You can hand it to her yourself. You're in the clear to ask her to leave. Something unclenched in my chest. A door I'd been leaning against for months finally cracked open. Copy, I said. I'll keep it short. Good, Paul replied. And remember, no yelling. Calm men win courtrooms. I hung up and looked around my shop. For the first time in a long time, I wasn't just reacting. I had the green light. I left the shop early that day. Not to escape, just to get things done. The sun was low when I pulled up to the house in Reynoldsburg. Same driveway, same mailbox leaning a little to the left. I opened it and heard that familiar metal scrape. Inside was a thick envelope with both our names printed on the front. Black ink. Government font. Final in a way conversations never are. I tucked it under my arm and walked inside. The place was quiet. Too quiet for a house with two people supposedly building a life. A half-empty glass sat sweating on the coffee table. One of her high heels was tipped over under a chair, the other abandoned by the door like it had given up halfway. I stood there and really looked at it all. The throw pillows she picked, the blanket draped just so, the framed photo of us on some beach where we'd pretended everything was okay. It didn't feel like a home anymore. It felt like a set after the actors had left. Props, lighting, no story. Right there, envelope in hand, I made a decision. This house was going to host one last scene. Not another fight, not another performance. Just the truth, finally spoken with the door wide open. Once I knew what that last scene was going to be, I got to work. I went to the closet and pulled down the big suitcase, then the smaller carry-on she liked to brag about getting on sale. Funny what people are proud of. I started with the obvious. The date night dresses, the ones she wore on those work dinners that didn't smell like work when she came home, the red-soled heels she swore were an investment, the glittery makeup bag that turned our bathroom into a vanity for an audience I couldn't see, then the bathroom itself, hairdryer, bottles I couldn't pronounce, serums that cost more than a week of groceries. I didn't rage. I folded, wrapped, zipped. 2 suitcases, her life with me, in portable form. I set them both by the front door, not thrown, lined up, ready. Then I grabbed my drill, took out the old deadbolt, and installed a new commercial-grade lock from the shop. Heavy, solid, no wiggling. When it clicked into place, it sounded like closure. I wiped my hands, took out my phone, and texted Paul one word. Done. For the first time, I'd packed her as a character out of my story. By the time the sun started dropping, the house felt strangely calm. 2 suitcases by the door, envelope on the table, new lock holding steady. Then I heard her car in the driveway. She tried the handle like she always did, quick, entitled. The knob stopped. A beat, then the knock. Harder the second time. "Caleb," she called, voice sharpened by panic. "Why is the door locked?" I opened it halfway, enough for her to see me, and the luggage lined up behind me. Her eyes were already red, mascara smudged like she'd been crying in the car or somewhere that didn't go how she planned. "What is this?" she demanded. I lifted the envelope with our names on it. "Mail," I said. "Papers from my lawyer. They match what you were laughing about earlier." The words hung there between us, heavier than the suitcases at her feet. She blinked, mouth opening and closing, searching for a script that would work here. I didn't raise my voice, didn't step outside. I just held the line. Calm, steady, done. She glanced up and down the street, then back at me, panic creeping into her voice. "Can we please talk inside?" she whispered. "People can see." "Good," I said. "Witnesses help people remember." Her eyes filled fast. "Caleb, we built a life." I shook my head. "I built a life," I said quietly. "You turned it into a show. I'm done clapping." She stepped closer, fingers tightening around the strap of her purse. "You can't just lock me out." "Yes," I said, steady. "I can." "You can't," she shot back, voice rising. "You don't just erase someone like that." I held her stare. "You don't get to burn the bridge," I said, "and still ask for a ride." That shut her up. You could see the math in her face. Every Tuesday, Every Thursday, every meeting, every giggle on that speakerphone call. I wasn't yelling. I wasn't name-calling. I was just a man standing in the doorway of his own house, finally refusing to pretend that the fire behind him was an accident. The audience she'd picked? They weren't here to save her now. She regrouped fast, like she always did. "You don't even know anything," she snapped. "You're making up stories in your head." I almost laughed. "Okay," I said. "Let's talk stories." I leaned my shoulder against the frame. Tuesday nights, gray SUV with a dent in the rear bumper, Evan Cole behind the wheel. Her face went white. Thursdays, I went on. Same car, cafe by the lake, Harbor Lake, corner table, back patio. You wore that perfume you think I don't notice. "Stop," she whispered. "Hotel off I-70, exit 108, Fairfield Inn. You went in 20 minutes after him, left an hour later. Condo downtown on Westfield, unit with the black balcony rail. You two looked comfortable." Her shoulders collapsed, all the fight draining out of her. "You aimed at my dignity," I said, "and you missed. I'm still standing, but I'm not going to pretend it didn't happen." I picked up the suitcases, set them gently on the porch. Then I held out the envelope. "Here's the paperwork," I said. "Take what's yours and go." When I closed that door, it wasn't a slam, it was a line, and for once it was mine. The next morning, my phone looked like it had been in a car wreck. Missed calls stacked on missed calls, voicemails, long texts, emails with subjects like "please" and "can we talk" and "this isn't you." Same woman who laughed about my divorce on speaker now suddenly remembered I was human. I didn't open the voicemails. I skimmed the first few words of the texts, then let the rest blur together. When I checked the mailbox, there was a handwritten note. Ink smudged like she'd cried on it. "We can fix this if you stop being stubborn." I took it inside, laid it flat on my desk, snapped a picture, scanned it into a folder on my computer. I named the folder Sentimental Attempts. Then I put the actual letter in a drawer and went to work. No reply, no long speech, no emotional ping-pong. The older I get, the more I believe this. Not every message deserves an answer. That day, my silence wasn't cold, it was a boundary. And for the first time in a long time, it felt like I was the one choosing the temperature. A couple days later, in the middle of a normal shift at the shop, my phone buzzed again. Different name this time, Brianna Cole. The message was short, no emojis, no small talk. "Is it true? Yes or no?" I just stood there for a second, gloves still on, the noise of the grinders in the background, looking at that sentence. Is it true? She didn't say what it was. She didn't have to. For a long minute, I felt that old urge rise up, the need to explain, to walk someone else through the wreckage they helped build, to soften the blow. Then I thought about every Tuesday, every Thursday, every laugh on that speakerphone call. I took off one glove, typed 2 words. Ask him. Sent. No extra line, no details, no screenshots. I set the phone face down on the workbench and went back to counting inventory. In that moment, I stopped being the narrator for everyone else's story. If Brianna wanted the truth, she could go straight to the man who'd been lying to both of us. It was a quiet afternoon when she showed up again. No drama, no banging on the door, just a knock. Small, almost polite. I opened it and stepped out onto the porch. She looked smaller somehow. No lashes, no heels, just a sweatshirt and eyes that hadn't slept. "I can't pay rent," she said with a nervous laugh. "I'm actually asking my parents if I can stay for a while. Isn't that funny?" I didn't answer. "I told Brianna it was a misunderstanding," she went on, voice thinning. "She doesn't believe me." Silence stretched. Then she said it, almost a whisper. "I don't want to be the bad person in your story." I let that sit. That's what it always came back to for her. Image, narrative, how she looked in the retelling. "You're not a story," I said. "You're a case study." She flinched like I'd slapped her, but I hadn't raised a hand or my voice, because that's what it was now. Not a romance, not a tragedy. Just an example of what happens when you play with a man's trust and assume the ending will still make you look good. The day we signed the divorce papers was almost painfully normal. No storm, no dramatic music, Just fluorescent lights in Paul Whitaker's office and the soft scratch of pens on paper. Sienna sat on one side of the table, I sat on the other. We didn't hold hands. We didn't fight over who got the plates or the couch. The joint account stayed open just long enough to clear what we'd agreed on: mortgage, utilities, a few last bills. Then it would close. My separate account, the one I'd opened when the writing first hit the fridge calendar, stayed untouched. Mine. Paul slid the final page toward us. "Sign here," he said. "This makes it official." We did. No tears. No last-minute speeches. He stacked the documents, lined them up, and patted the file once. "You did what you said you'd do," he told me. Calm, clean. I nodded. "I'm done carrying other people's chaos," I said, and I meant it. On the drive home, it hit me. There'd been no big explosion at the end. Just a man walking away from a war that never admitted it was a war until the papers were already signed. A week or so after the papers were signed, life slipped into a new kind of normal. Not happy, not sad, just steady. I was at the shop with Rick, going over a new order. Big job, custom frames, a lot of welding, the kind of work that forces you to focus. He tapped the drawing with his glove. "You know what I love about steel?" he said. "You heat it, shape it, let it cool. It remembers the shape." I let that line sit there, watched the sparks in the distance, the way they fly wild for a second and then die out on the floor. "People should try that," I said. Rick glanced at me. "You did." I didn't answer, but he wasn't wrong. The affair, the lies, the speakerphone humiliation, the door closing, they'd all bent me into something I hadn't planned to be. But standing there, boots on concrete, the smell of metal in my lungs, I realized I hadn't snapped. I'd cooled. And whatever shape I was going to carry into the rest of my life, I was finally choosing it on purpose. After the dust settled, I bought a smaller place out in Blacklick Estates, about 15 minutes closer to the shop. Nothing fancy. One story, decent yard, quiet street, the kind of house nobody brags about on Instagram, but men actually live in. The garage had room for my truck and one more spot I kept empty on purpose. A promise to myself, not to anyone else. First weekend there, I ripped out the old laminate counters and put in butcher block with my own hands, sanded, stained, sealed. As I worked, I caught myself thinking, I wanted a surface without her fingerprints in the wood. I painted the cabinets a plain, clean white. No designer colors, no statement wall debates, just what made sense to me. There was no our song playing, no shared Pinterest board, no negotiation over pillow colors. It felt strange at first, then peaceful. For years, every space I lived in was ours, even when it didn't feel like home. Standing in that new kitchen, sawdust on the floor, sweat on my back, keys that only fit my lock in my pocket, I finally had something simple and solid, mine. My Saturdays used to be spent waiting to see if she'd change her mind, if plans would get canceled, if I needed to pivot around moods I didn't cause. Now they look different. I'm at Ray's gym by 8, old rock in the background, weights clanking, nobody trying to impress anybody, just men sweating out the week. Ray nods at me, nothing more. That's all I need. After that, I drive to Maple Junction Diner. Same place where Grant slid that folder across the table and cracked my marriage open. Funny thing, once the truth is out, a diner goes back to just being a diner. Coffee, eggs, quiet. Then I take the truck out toward Alum Creek. No schedule, no where are you texts, just the road, some talk radio, sometimes silence. My phone stays face down on the passenger seat. It still works. I just don't live chained to it anymore. Somewhere between the gym, the coffee, and the water, it hits me. I don't need chaos to prove I'm alive. I traded the roller coaster for something better, a life that feels boring to outsiders and peaceful to the man actually living it. The yard at the new place was a mess. Patchy grass, wild edges, a couple of bushes that looked like they'd given up trying. I could have ignored it, but I wanted this house to feel cared for, even if it was just me in it. So I called a local landscaping company. That's how Claire Harmon ended up standing in my driveway with a tape measure and a notebook. She wasn't overdone. Work boots, ponytail, sun on her face. No fake laugh, no over-the-top charm. She walked the yard, talking more about soil, drainage, and shade than about herself. When she asked questions, they were simple. How much maintenance do you actually want? What do you use this space for? No digging into my personal life. No, so are you married? Fishing expedition. When she was done, she said, I'll email you a quote later today, then left. No, can you answer right now? No pressure. That night, the quote came in, clear, fair, no fluff. I remember leaning back in my chair thinking, she doesn't need an audience. For the first time in a long time, I felt a small, unfamiliar thing in my chest. Not fireworks, not obsession. Just the first, quiet spark of hope that not every woman comes with a stage. By the third time I saw Claire, it wasn't about testing anything, I just wanted to be there. We met at a small place off the main road. No live band, no neon signs screaming for attention. Just a few booths, decent coffee, and the kind of quiet where you can actually hear someone think. I put my phone face down on the table out of habit, then realized it hadn't buzzed all day. No crisis, no drama, no, we need to talk. Claire noticed. She took a sip of her drink, eyes flicking to the phone. I like how quiet your phone is, she said. I smiled, really smiled this time. I deleted the noise, I told her. She laughed softly, not at me, just at how simple that sounded. But sitting there, across from a woman who talked more about her latest job site than about other people's business, I felt it hit me. That one line was the summary of my divorce. I didn't just lose a wife, I cut out the chaos she carried. And for the first time in years, I could actually hear my own life again. After a workout one morning, I was sitting on the bench by the front desk lacing up my boots when Ray tossed me a bottle of water. So, he said, how's the landscaping lady? I smirked. Her name's Claire. He raised an eyebrow. You happy? I thought about that. Not in the fireworks way, not in the movie way. I'm at peace, I said. That's better than excited. Ray leaned back, nodded like a man who's seen a few things. Excitement is cheap, he said. Peace is expensive. I let that line sink in. He was right. Excitement was speakerphone drama, last-minute plans, perfume for strangers, and constant guessing games. It cost sleep, money, self-respect. Peace was a quiet house, steady work, Saturdays that didn't feel like auditions, a woman who showed up when she said she would and didn't need a spotlight. I paid for it with my old life, I said finally. Ray didn't argue, didn't tell me I was being dramatic. He just clapped a hand on my shoulder and said, "Good trade, man." And for once, I believed it. One afternoon, I was pulling into my driveway when I saw Tommy from next door wrestling his trash can back up the curb. He waved. I got out of the truck. Small talk about weather, the usual. Then he cleared his throat. She came by once, he said. Sienna. I just looked at him. Asked about you, he went on. Wanted to know how you were doing. What did you tell her? I asked. He shrugged. Told her? He's fine. I nodded. Good answer. He waited, like he was giving me a chance to ask for more. Where she was staying, who she was with, how bad it got. I didn't take it. We changed the subject. Football, work, the usual neighbor script, and that was that. Later, standing in my quiet kitchen, I thought, she wanted control. She wanted comfort. She wanted status. She ended up with a suitcase and a silence. Her life from here on out? That's her problem set, not mine. For the first time, I didn't feel the itch to check her social media, to ask around, to track the fallout. I'd finally learned the difference between closure and curiosity. It was a regular night, dishes done, tools put away, TV off. The kind of quiet that used to scare me and now felt like a blanket. I'd just set my phone on the table when her name popped up on the screen. Sienna. No text, no voicemail icon, just an incoming call. I watched it light up, buzz, slide across the wood. Old me would have answered on the first ring. Middle me would have picked up on the third, heart racing, ready for one more round. This version of me just watched it. Ring, vibrate, timeout. I let it die on its own. No swipe, no send to voicemail, just nothing. Then I grabbed my keys, walked out to the garage of my small house in Blacklick, and pulled the door shut behind me. The new lock I'd installed, same model we use at the shop, clicked clean. No rattle, no doubt. That's it, I thought. The door held. The line held. I walked away, not because I won, but because I finally refused to keep playing a game where my dignity was optional. Some calls are about reconnecting. That one was about proof, and I didn't need proof anymore. If you're a man listening to this, you probably recognize pieces of yourself along the way. Maybe you've been the punchline, the guy on speakerphone, the one trying to keep the lights on while someone else turns your life into a show. Here's what I learned the hard way. You start by laughing it off, then you start taking notes, then one day you stop explaining, and you draw a line. For me, that line was simple. Home is supposed to be a safe place, not a stage. Respect is not an upgrade. It's the floor. If it's not there, nothing else matters. I went from being the joke to being the man who changed the locks, signed the papers, and walked away with his dignity still on him. So let me ask you something. Are you carrying someone else's chaos? Are you calling it love when it's really just disrespect with nice lighting? If any of this hits you, don't ignore it. Hit like, hit subscribe, and if you've got a story of your own, drop it in the comments. Not for drama, for the men who need to hear they're not crazy for wanting peace over chaos and respect over entertainment.